Welcome on the news reveal belt of the show. We'll be digging into the papers, but this morning I just want to throw this invitation to you. I don't think we do this enough. So apart from sharing your thoughts via the live stream on some of the matters we're going to be discussing, if you know someone who is celebrating a special day today, a birthday, among others, just shoot it to me via the live stream and I'll be sure to celebrate. Yes, we get requests coming in, but usually not from you. So you share that and we'll celebrate those people live on the AM show. Thank you for staying. This segment is brought to you by Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. I don't need to over elaborate. I've been saying it every morning. If you're a man, check your prostate, especially after the age of 30. If you're a woman, do you know your fertility status? Which is why Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, being gracious as they are saying, come, free, gratis. You can get these kinds of screening for your prostate in terms of your fertility-related issues if you're a woman, and they will get you sorted out. You can locate them here in Accra at Spintex opposite the Shell signboard. There's Kumasi Kronoma Boahen behind the Angel Educational Complex. There's Takrade Anaje Estate if you find yourself in that part of town. If you're still in the Greater Accra region, Tema. You can locate them in Community 22. There's Techim and Hanswa and Siama and Zima. Their call lines are 0244 867 068 or 0274 234 321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. Now, shortly, we'll be joined by Madam Joyce Lanyo. Let me just cross-check whether we have Madam Joyce Lanyo on the line. Good morning, Joyce. Hello. All right, so we'll connect with Joyce Lanyo shortly. She is Country Director, International Child Development Program. If you can hear me, Joyce, please unmute so we can hear what you're saying.
I'm on mute.
Okay, all right. Good morning to you. It's been a while. I hope you've been well.
Yes, good morning. I'm excited to be back to do the newspaper review, and thank you for the opportunity.
We're glad to have you always. Country Director, International Child Development Program. Let me just find out from you before we get into the papers. Are there any matters of concern that have caught your attention within the last few weeks, since we've not spoken in a while, that you would like to get into briefly before we get into the papers?
Yeah, the most urgent one of which I have been part of the advocacy is the taxes on the pads.
Sanitary pads.
That's the sanitary pads that we are advocating for. I was amazed when the sanitary pads were categorized as luxury goods, and it's unbelievable to put sanitary pad there because it's something that is with women almost every day, everywhere. So I don't see the luxury around it.
They attract taxes of about 35%. But the other angle to the conversation is, for example, the AGI, the Association of Ghana Industries. They say, look, if you reduce the taxes on these, most of them are imported. You know, if you reduce the taxes on them, the businesses, the few businesses in Ghana that produce these toiletries and sanitary ware will have to fold up. They will be out of business. I didn't necessarily agree with them because there are ways of protecting while still ensuring that things are less costly. So for me, it's middle ground. But what is your take on that? What is your reaction to the AGI?
Yeah, I was also surprised that AGI should come up with that argument that the taxes were to be maintained. Otherwise, they were going to lose their jobs and all that. And I'm like, we are talking about human lives, humans' education, women's health in all aspects. And then people are looking at the sustainability of their jobs, the profitability that they are going to make, and the collapse of their businesses. We are in this country, and chicken and rice and all those other stuffs are being imported into this country. Whereas we have local rice. People yet still do not patronize and would probably prefer the imported one. And with the sanitary pads, what about our colleagues in the rural areas? What do they do? Now the awareness is there. People are used to the sanitary pads and the tax on it. Even if you are being given from externally as a gift, you have to pay tax. I have tried, and the tax component, I told my collaborators
about 35%.
Keep it over there. Yes. So the AGI argument on this particular matter really is, even though it's about survival and all this, I think they should have come in a better direction rather than to say that their business were going to collapse and so the taxes should be maintained.
But just to be fair to them as well, in contemplating this issue, while I do not necessarily agree with them, I feel that government can still reduce taxes and ensure that they stay afloat, that they can do business. You can't also run away from the fact that these associations, these companies also provide jobs. You're talking about their businesses and all of that, but those businesses are also employing ordinary Ghanaians. Some people are getting their daily bread from those businesses. So it's a situation that we must look at from different angles. I've always been an advocate for the sanitary pads, that the taxes make no sense. But at the same time, you cannot completely reject what the AGI is saying, can you?
Well, so it cannot be a win-win situation like you propose. There should be some level of negotiations where their businesses will be kept afloat. And then at the same time, the call for the reduction of these taxes are looked at. So the experts and the economics and all those people should come together to find a way that our call, because this call wouldn't go away. We just simply cannot afford these pads.
Right.
Our young girls cannot afford it. And it brings a lot of issues, school dropouts and all those challenges, women, girls staying away in times of their periods. And it's affecting the educational outcomes as well. So we are still saying that this conversation wouldn't go. So government should use his machinery to look out for ways to reduce these parts and yet keep our AGI colleagues who are also taking care of a critical component of the economy in terms of jobs. These are all looked at so that we all arrive at a consensus. Otherwise, this conversation cannot just be left in the back burner. It will continue to be something that we will be talking about all the time. Yeah.
I'll just say this to cap off that conversation on that bit. One thing about governments in Ghana, well, everywhere, but especially here in Ghana, is that once they have a tax component, no matter what the backlash is, once it rakes in money for that administration, it is extremely difficult for them to scrap those taxes. I mean, the rhetoric when now Vice President Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia was in opposition before he became Vice President, and all of that was taxation to production. So they came in, they took some of what they called nuisance taxes out, fed others in through the back door, and now we are where we are. Governments have been unable to actually move from taxation to production. There's no real production, and that is why our economy is so susceptible to the shocks, any shocks that may come our way. So we tax, and it's a small bracket that you're taxing. So you tax them into the ground, apart from indirect taxes that hit everybody, even when you purchase credits. The main taxes hit you, me, and a few other people very hard, because everywhere you go, there are taxes. So that is part of the problem. Our leaders are not thinking outside of the box. I'm sorry to say it. Administration in, administration out. They're not thinking outside of the box. It's just about tax, tax, tax. And when you talk about this, people say, look at the UK, look at the US. Oh, you also look at what they are giving their citizens. If you want to look at the tax component, look at what they are delivering. If you're in those jurisdictions and there's a fire or something, within minutes, you'll get assistance from the fire service. Something as simple as a pet getting caught in a tree will attract the fire service or something. Here, your property might get burnt to ashes. So those are, and I'm not trying to demean the fire service. They do the best they can with the resources they have. But I'm just trying to point out that we are tax-happy people. tax-happy leadership without thinking. It's always about taxing, taxing, taxing. And this is some of what you get, taxing even sanitary products. Just to cap off, Joyce, it would interest you to know that Nigeria, Kenya, Rwanda, I think Tanzania, among other countries, have scrapped these taxes on sanitary products. I'm talking about sanitary pads and others. They scrapped them for a long time now. We are still in the doldrums of that because, again, our leadership is tax happy. They don't want to innovate. It's always about the low-hanging fruit, the easiest way of making cheap money, and that doesn't help anyway. But let's get into the papers.
You said it all, Ben. You said it all, and I totally agree with you.
So the Daily Graphic this morning, Joyce, 11.5 million euro Adaklu Waya water facility commissioned. Then there's Opuni trial won't start afresh, Court of Appeal rules. Integrate business value to drive society. Professor Duncan says so. And then OSP investigates over 150 cases. Charles Bissue, Boahen probes completed. Then there's also GCB posts strong performance, DDEP hits hard. On the back page of that paper, choked canals hinder vegetable production at Waja. And then Customs Division destroys goods imported without permits. Now let's get into the major stories. The Office of the Special Prosecutor has concluded investigations into allegations of corruption against a former Minister of State at the Ministry of Finance, Charles Boahen, and 3 other high-profile suspected corruption cases. These are, besides 9 other cases the OSP is investigating, while more than 150 cases are at various levels of consideration. In its half-yearly report dated June the 30th this year, the 3 other investigative cases concluded by the OSP included an allegation of an attempt by a wealthy businessman. I'm very interested in this one. By a wealthy businessman to bribe some members of parliament on the majority side who called for the resignation of the Minister of Finance, Ken Ofori-Atta, to rescind their decision. That matter, we've still not got to the bottom of it. And some of these MPs, members of parliament, know. When the members of parliament come into the studio today for the big stories, I'll question them. What has happened to this matter? The leadership of parliament spoke about it. You can't speak about something you don't know about. What happened? There's also, the OSP indicated that with the conclusion of investigations into the 4 cases, the special prosecutor would soon announce its next line of action, adding, quote, the special prosecutor will issue directives and further action on the matter in due course. There are other concluded cases that are also spoken of. But any reactions to this story?
Yeah, you are talking about issues around corruption, bribery, and all that. And all these practices do not support national development. People who are given resources or who are entrusted with us resources to embark on a certain agenda in the interest of the Ghanaian people should be rather accountable and be transparent in everything that they do.
Right.
So when red flags are raised, when whistles are blown to indicate that there is a certain level of corruption or there is lack of transparency in a certain activity, it behoves on those in charge, especially the special prosecutor, to go into the matter and then prosecute it in such a way that there will be value for the prosecution that the people are looking for. And if there is the case where the person is exonerated or left off all those allegations, then well and good for Ghanaian people. Right. But there's always the issue of underhands in cases of corruption. People are being threatened. People are giving false witnesses. Then in that case, our national development will be thwarted in a lot of ways. And people will continue to engage in these issues around bribery and corruption. So I think the special prosecutor has a yeoman's job to come into terms with all these allegations and serve justice to the Ghanaian people. Otherwise, these are things that are going, and people in charge of the purse are always doing things in their own way, lack of transparency. Cases come up, we hear of it, and then it goes down, and that will be the end of the story. You ask, and nobody is able to So I think it behoves on the special prosecutor at this time to come out clear in the cases of the bribery, and those who are found guilty are also brought to book.
All right.
My take on this is becoming too much, and this will not support our national development, I'm afraid.
Of course not. If you're losing between $4 and $6 billion every year to corruption, and you're going to the IMF for $3 billion, cuckoo. Just have to think through. Page 39 of the paper, GCB posts strong performance, DDEP hits hard. And so GCB Bank PLC recorded a strong overall performance in 2022, including growing its total operating income by 24%. However, the introduction of the domestic debt exchange program occasioned a net loss. Now, the listed bank's financial performance for last year was underpinned by 24% growth in its operating revenue from 2.4 billion Ghana cedis to 3 billion Ghana cedis. Again, in terms of assets, the bank with the largest network also grew total assets from 18.4 billion in 2021 to 21.5 billion last year. But just quickly on this one, suspend mobile money charges, NCR to the Bank of Ghana. Now, the Network of Communication Reporters has called on the Bank of Ghana to ensure that MTN Mobile Money Limited permanently suspends the planned increases in mobile money charges. The mobile money lenders had indicated that beginning the 1st of July 2023, mobile money cash out transactions of up to 2,000 Ghana cedis would attract a 1% fee. Again, from 2,000 Ghana cedis upward, the fee remained fixed at 20 Ghana cedis. I'm sure some of you got messages and to that effect, but now there is the call to scrap that altogether. Do you have any quick thoughts on that before we move to other papers, Joyce?
Yeah. I think these mobile money transactions initially received a lot of hue and cry in terms of whatever we were supposed to pay during every transfer. And so the mobile money networks are making huge sums of money and at the, impoverishment of we, the people who are sending the money. These days is the fastest way of sending money to anybody on the other side. And look, even one city is a lot to Ghanaians. And so they've made enough, they've made a lot of money, and their corporate social responsibility should also increase.
Right.
It's increasing, and we've seen some of their activities. But look, we are talking about desk in Ghana, desk in schools. Majority of the schools do not have desks. Schools are still under trees. Teacher infrastructure to support effective teaching and learning are challenges. So we want to see some of these benefits from the mobile money networks to support these initiatives that we are always crying. And government, we've seen that government alone cannot do it. So if they are charging, then the money should also be seen in terms of certain key issues that we are talking about. Education. Lately, we made a press conference about some of the issues that the basic education sector is suffering because the government has cut the funding to that sector. So some of these organizations can come in to support the development agenda, providing some of these things that we are talking about, children that are lying on the floor and sleeping on blocks to write and all those things. Some of these resources can go in to support glaringly for us to appreciate that, of course, the tax that I'm paying is also going in to support my child somewhere in the rural community, my child who is sleeping on the floor to write, no desk to sit on, so that we all appreciate that government is also receiving the support, because it's clear that government cannot do this alone. So some of these taxes should go into the areas that we are talking about, and we can applaud them for all they are doing. But if I'm paying and it's going into some small water system in a community,
right,
the larger community having challenges, then I think a lot of us will have to, cry over these taxes. But, well, taxes are good. They help to develop the nation. But we are pleading that some of these resources could be channeled to support government initiatives. My take. Yeah.
Aaron Babako Kokomisa on via the live stream says, good morning to you. The system is so porous in such a way that even if there were a gunshot on the blind side of the security agencies, they would lack security intelligence to dictate who did that. My point is that the core duty of the security agencies is to protect life and property. That is what we want to see and nothing else. Okay. Thanks for sharing that message. I'm going to look at a number of stories from different newspapers, Joyce, and then we can get into them. When you look at the graphic business this morning, $809 million bond swap. Engage, build investor confidence. That's according to experts. There's also WAPCO cuts supply over $13 million mounting debt. Now, the West African Gas Pipeline Company Limited has suspended natural gas transportation services to the Ghana National Petroleum Authority. Deep-throated sources have confirmed to the graphic business. This follows the inability of the National Petroleum Authority to settle its indebtedness to WAPCO to the tune of over $13.99 million. The decision, which took effect from July the 1st, comes after a series of negotiations between the two entities over debt arrears, although the GNPC paid $1.246 million to WAPCO last week. So that would leave over $12 million to be paid. Then there's also this one. Capital market experts have asked the government to be transparent as it engages investors to restructure dollar-denominated bonds totaling about $809 million. The experts also urged the government to extensively engage these investors before officially announcing any debt restructuring offer. Of course, this would be on the back of the first DDEP and the many problems, the manifold problems that accompanied them, the proposals, the back and forth, the pushing and shoving, and finally how ugly the entire DDEP went from what could have been a very friendly exercise. So there are those two, and then let me add these ones. Ketasco NSMQ star dies. That's the Daily Guide newspaper now. And the late James Lutrot. He was in the 2021 Ketasco team for the first time out of the Volta region. That team made it to the finals of the National Science and Math Quiz. He was together with his team making waves, and he is suspected to have suffered a case of food poisoning and passed on. In fact, he had an interaction with Joy FM. But I also want to highlight this story. Alan Bawumia grilled on presidential bids. And 3 of the 10 aspirants vying to lead the New Patriotic Party in the 2024 general election successfully went through the party's vetting process yesterday, answering a series of questions. Former Trade and Industry Minister Alan Kwadwo Kyerematen, energy specialist, or analyst, I should say, Kojo Poku, and Vice President Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia all took turns at the vetting, which is conducted at the MPP's Greater Accra Regional Headquarters at Kokomlimli. Today, Boahen, Kyerematen, Ejako, Kwabena J. Japong, and Kennedy Ohene Japong will take the seat at the vetting committee. Any reactions to these stories, Joyce?
Yeah, I would like to express my sincere condolence to the family of Master Lutrot.
Yeah.
For this loss. In fact, people of this high intellectual IQs are very, very difficult to come by. And these are guys who come up to become nation developers, big time people who support in all areas of development. And so for him to suffer this food poisoning issue, I don't have the full story. I can only express my condolence to the family.
He was actually,
Ghanaians.
From what I gather, he had got some scholarship or something. He was due to travel, for further studies. And unfortunately, this happens. But I just had to bring this in. Food poisoning. Was it last year? I suffered a terrible case of food poisoning. And I just want to send a message to all of us out there. Be careful where you eat, what you eat, and all of that. Because if this turns out to be true, how sad would it be that on the back of, something like food poisoning, we've lost a gem? Just saying.
Yes. So it's rather unfortunate, and condolences to all Ghanaians and to the family. And whatever it is that caused the food poison, I believe they will have to look into it. And where the poisoning came from, they will have to take it up to make sure that everybody is satisfied with the investigations and the matter is put at rest. But it's rather unfortunate, and our condolences to the family and Ghanaian as a whole, because we've lost a very important personality who was going to come up as one of the key, developers of this country. And so, coming back to the debt exchange program, it has not been easy. it's sad that because we were not able to manage our resources, government was not able to take care of the economy, we got to this point. And people who had earned their monies through various means, believing in the system, trusting that their investment will go to their benefits at the time they needed it, will have to go through this. And the ministry, the finance ministry, keeps on, giving promises that they are not able to meet. Please, for once, let's trust the system so that when you say something, you go by it. These are senior citizens that have paid their dues and their investments are meant for various purposes. And most importantly, majority are for medicals. And now Ben, medicines have quadrupled in prices. Services at hospitals are not anything that any ordinary Ghanaian can afford. And out of these, one of these, they are picketing. One of them said he was waiting for the time to start his, I've forgotten, but to go to Kolebu and do this dialysis, that's the word. And that his health is at risk. So this whole designated program has come with serious challenges. And this will go to all our people in charge of public persons that, look, when we say the GDP rate against the borrowing is quadrupling or is going too high, and very soon we'll reach the target of unsustainable debts, it's a serious issue that government will have to consider. That they don't bring us to a point where we are giving a meager amount of IMF, yet we'll have to go through a very serious process to get this money. I'm not sure this money will come out of a million situations to help. So we want to plead that some of these debt exchange programs should be looked at critically so that people who have had trust in the government and have invested their monies will be taken care of at a time that they will need their funds. Rather than going through picketing, nobody is talking to them in the sun, singing. Oh my God.
It's quite a situation. Madam Lanyo, thank you so much for joining us this morning. And I appreciate what you're saying because I have to buy medicine every month. And I know what the costs have been like, how they have spiraled. We're grateful that you took the time to join us this morning. And we wish you the very best.
It's my pleasure. And you are always welcome, Ben. Thank you.
All right. The final story here that I will just take a brief look at. We'll bring you details of that later in our subsequent bulletins. Nkrumah Park, now world-class standard. President Akufo-Addo to commission it today. We'll be bringing you details of that. But we're just joined by Country Director, International Child Development Program, Joyce Lanyo. Right before we get into sports, you do know that this segment is always brought to you by Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. They're offering free prostate screening, free female fertility screening as well. Just head to any of their branches across Pintex, opposite the Shell signboard, Kumasi Krono Boahen behind the Angel Educational Complex, Takrade Anaji State Tema Community 22, Tichiman Hanswa, and Asiema Nzima. You can reach them on 0244 867 068 or 0274 234 321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. The end to chronic disease. Just the start, though, of sports up next.